The Red Car. The Red Car is a scary urban legend from Mexico about a group of witches who travel the roads looking for men. It is also known as El Carro de las Brujas, or the Carriage of the Witches. They say that in Mexico there is a scarlet red car that travels at night on the road between Mexico City and Cuernavaca. Usually it is only seen by men who wander the lonely streets after dark. They call it El Carro de las Brujas, or the Carriage of the Witches. Inside the red car there are 2 or 3 women. Sometimes there are as many as 5, and they all are very beautiful. When they see a man alone by the side of the road, they stop the car and try to entice him to get inside. They use sensual language, gestures, and promise that they will fulfill his dream. If the man accepts their offer and gets into the red car, he is usually found sometime later, lying lifeless by the side of the road, his bruised and battered body covered with cuts and strange arcane symbols. It is obvious that he has been subjected to some dark occult ritual in which he has been sacrificed to the devil. Some say that the scarlet lining of the red car is made from the blood of the victim, the ugly baby. The ugly baby is a Mexican urban legend about a hideous child that is born in a small hospital one terrible night. According to the legend, this all happened a few years ago in a small hospital in the city of Chihuahua, Mexico. It was a rainy Monday night in March when a pregnant woman staggered into the hospital's emergency room. She had fallen down the stairs at her home. The poor woman was in great pain and her condition was very serious. She was bleeding internally and the doctors had to operate immediately. The woman knew she was dying, but she wanted to save her child. Doctors had to perform a cesarean section. As the poor mother died on the operating table, they cut her stomach open. When the surgeon reached in and took out the baby, he discovered that it was dead too. It was the most ugly baby he had ever seen. Its skin was a sickly grayish purple and its head was misshapen and deformed. The baby's face was hideously shriveled and wrinkled, like an old man. A nurse quickly took the child and brought it into another room, where she placed it in a crib. The baby was so ugly that all of the nurses and the hospital nurses could not stop talking about how horrible it was. They each took a few minutes to go into the room and see it for themselves. 2 nurses went in together to view the grotesque and malformed baby. As they stared down at it, the nurses were overcome by a sense of revulsion. They couldn't bear to look at it. "My God," said one nurse, "it's so ugly." "It's better that it didn't survive," said the other. Suddenly the ugly baby's eyes flickered up open and its mouth began to move. From deep within its throat a low guttural moan escaped. In a hoarse voice that filled them with terror it said, "I may be ugly, but more ugly still is what will happen to both of you on Thursday at 3 p.m. With that, the baby closed its eyes and lay still. The 2 nurses came running out of the room. They were screaming and crying hysterically. Their colleagues had to give them medication to help calm them down. When they were able to recount what had happened, nobody would believe them. One doctor examined the child again, checking his vital signs. He confirmed that the ugly baby had been dead when it came out of its mother's stomach. The 2 nurses were shaking and trembling. They spent 2 days off sick from work with their nerves. The hospital psychiatrist tried to tell them that it must have been their imagination. A collective psychosis, he said. The next day, the 2 nurses returned to work. Hours later, they died in a freak accident. A gas storage tank blew up and both of them were killed in the explosion. The accident occurred on a Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just as the ugly baby had predicted. Mexican bus. The Mexican bus is a ghost story from a dangerous mountain road in Mexico and an accident that killed everyone who was traveling in the bus. Today, if you are traveling in Mexico between the city of Toluca and the town of Ixtapan de la Sal, there is a lovely highway that makes the journey quick and easy. However, years ago, anyone making that journey was forced to travel along a dangerous and winding mountain road. On one side of the narrow road, there was a steep vertical rock, and on the other side, there was a sheer drop. One evening, many years ago, a bus departed from Ixtapan de la Sal, as usual, making the familiar journey to Toluca. It was an overnight trip, so the passengers on the bus took the opportunity to get some much-needed sleep. When the bus reached the base of the mountain, it started the slow climb up the slope without any problem. Most of the passengers had made this trip many times, and they noticed nothing out of the ordinary. When the bus reached the highest point on the mountain, it began to rain, and the driver negotiated the dangerous curves as the road descended. Some very serious accidents had occurred on this stretch of road, and many of them had been fatal. The bus began its descent in heavy rain, and the road was slick and wet. The passengers became a little nervous when they realized that the bus was picking up speed. This was unusual. Some of them called out to the driver, but he didn't respond. The bus got faster and faster and became more and more frightened. Suddenly, the driver cried out, "The brakes are failing." The bus was traveling at such a high speed that it was impossible to control. In the blink of an eye, they reached a curve and the driver swerved. It skittled off the cliff and plunged into the void. It tumbled down the rocky slope and smashed into the jagged rock below. Many of the passengers were killed instantly in the crash. Others lay unconscious and bleeding in the wreckage. Then the the bus caught fire, and within minutes, it was completely consumed by the flames. Nobody heard the chilling cries of the surviving passengers, and they all died in the most dreadful and horrible way imaginable. Later that night, the police located the site of the crash and called an ambulance. Unfortunately, it was no use. There were no survivors. The bodies of some passengers lay strewn about on the sharp rock. The bodies of others lay charred inside the smoking wreckage. Ever since that day, people have reported seeing the old bus traveling late at night on the road from Ixtapan de la Sal to Toluca. They say that if you hold out your hand, the bus will stop for you. The doors will open when you approach it. You will notice that the bus is old, but still in good condition. Even if the bus seems to be full, there will always be one empty seat. If you sit down, you will feel a strange emptiness in the pit of your stomach. You realize that something's very wrong. Despite the late hour, nobody on the bus is asleep. All of the men, women, and children are wide awake, staring straight forward, but nobody is saying a word. There's a heavy silence. A few minutes later, the bus conductor will walk down the aisle, checking ticket. You prepare the money to pay for your ticket, but the conductor just passes you by. You arrive at Toluca smoothly, but after midnight, the driver stops the bus before arriving at the bus terminal. Then he turns and tells you that you have to get off. The journey is not finished, and you don't understand why, but you obey. While everyone else stays seated, you get up and walk down the aisle. As you pass by the driver, you attempt to pay for your ticket. He waves away your money. There's no charge, says the driver. Go now and don't look back, or you will never leave this bus. Those who obey, who do not look behind, hear the sound of the door closing and the bus engine starting up and driving off. The disobedient who turn around will see that the bus is really a charred wreck. Inside, the skeletons that line the seats are staring silently through the windows. The bus will disappear and you will die in an accident a few days later. It is said that from that moment on, your ghost will be sitting in the bus. If by chance you travel to Ixtapan de la Sal one day, do not risk journeying to Toluca at night. There's a chance that you will meet the ghost bus. If you do, make sure you obey the driver's instructions, otherwise you will be condemned to travel on that bus for all eternity. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you.